In the so-called golden age of freak shows, for many freaks, it was their home, a place where they were not only accepted, but celebrated and made a very good living. But not everyone got the same treatment or the same choice. Some were coerced into performing by parents or poverty itself. Others were branded as curiosities before they could even speak for themselves. And in this video, we're going to look at the 15 freak show performers that actually existed. Number 15, Ronnie and Donnie Gallion. Ronnie and Donnie Gallion, born in 1951, became known around the world as the longest living conjoined twins in recorded history. They were joined at the abdomen and shared vital organs, which made surgical separation not risky, but impossible. Despite constant medical challenges, the brothers lived life to the fullest. Every single moment, from brushing teeth to traveling, was done side by side. They didn't just adapt to their situation, they thrived in it. Their lives became a testament to brotherhood, endurance, and the human spirit's ability to persist through extraordinary odds. They traveled across the U.S. with sideshow circuits in their youth, but later retired to a more private life in Dayton, Ohio. Inseparable in body and bond, they navigated life as one. They passed away together in 2020 at age 68. Ronnie and Donnie didn't just make history with their lifespan, they made it with their love for each other, their unbreakable attitude, and a presence that reminded the world, sometimes, two lives really can be lived as one. Number 14, John Daniel the Gorilla. John wasn't a performer in the usual sense. He was a Western lowland gorilla raised as a human child. Born in 1917 in Gabon, he was orphaned after soldiers shot his mother. From there, he ended up in the care of an Englishman, Major Rupert Penny, and was later raised by Penny's aunt, Alice Cunningham, in the village of Ely. John Daniel drank cider at the local pub, rode in cars, made his bed, and sipped tea from a cup. He wore clothes, had play dates with village kids, and even attended dinner parties in London. But at 210 pounds, he became too large to manage. In 1921, Cunningham sold him, believing he'd be retired to Florida. Instead, he was sent to the Barnum and Bailey Circus, then the Ringling Zoo in New York. Separated from his human home, John grew depressed. He died a year later from pneumonia. His body went on display at the American Museum of Natural History. A statue now stands in Ely to remember him. Number 13, Lucia Zora. Lucia didn't grow up dreaming of lion cages or circus tents. Her parents sent her to seminary, hoping she'd become an opera singer. But after one audition led to another, she ditched music and joined a traveling circus. When it collapsed, she flipped pancakes in a restaurant window to stay afloat. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. In 1904, she joined the Sells Floto Circus and set her sights on the one job no woman held: animal trainer. Fred Allisbaugh, an experienced elephant handler, trained her himself. Within 2 years, Lucia was directing herds of elephants, taming lions, and stepping into cages with Bengal tigers using only a whip, a chair, and a blank pistol. She didn't rely on brute force or fear. She used timing, rhythm, and calm. The crowds called her the bravest woman in the world. She retired in 1917 and finally died in 1936. Number 12, Charles Segrist. Charles Segrist lived for the air. Orphaned young and born with a stutter, he turned heads in Portland by tumbling through the streets for spare change. That's how a circus man noticed him. Taken in by Charles Lee, a show owner, young Charles was introduced to horses, ropes, and the sawdust stage. By 12, he was doing somersaults on horseback. In Europe, he performed for Queen Victoria and Kaiser Wilhelm II. Back in the States, his aerial skills turned him into a star. At his peak, Segrist could land 6 backward flips on a running horse and perform blindfolded on the trapeze. In 1931, he missed a grip at Madison Square Garden and fell hard, broken neck, shattered leg. Doctors ruled him out, but Segrist came back 2 years later, still flying. He finally retired after a shoulder injury in the late 40s. What stayed with people wasn't just the tricks, it was the resilience. In fact, decades later, his name still hangs in the rafters of circus history. Number 11. Helena Spinacuta. Born Elna Persdotter in 1766, Helena Spinacuta reinvented herself more than once. Before her marriage, she performed as Helena Pettersson in Gothenburg's Comedy-huset Theater. In 1784, she married the Venetian acrobat Antonio Spinacuta, who was then one of Sweden's most admired circus performers. Together, they toured southern Sweden and Denmark, releasing the country's first hot air balloons while dazzling crowds with theater, dance, and aerial acts. She debuted at Stockholm's Stenborg Theater in 1786, earning glowing reviews and packed shows. Poems were written in her honor, and her beauty and talent made her the standout of that season. By 1795, she and her husband had joined the Ricketts Circus in Philadelphia, where Helena pulled off a rare Roman riding act with 2 horses, something no woman had performed in America before. After her husband's death, she returned to Sweden and lived quietly in Trelleborg with her sister. Her early fame may have faded, but Helena Spinacuta's name survives as one of Sweden's earliest international circus stars. Now, let's head over to Number 10. The Equestrian Aerialist. S. Bannister was born in 1787 and came from one of the earliest families to run a touring circus in Britain. Her father, James Bannister, was a pioneering equestrian showman, and by 1804, S. Bannister was already performing alongside him in towns across Scotland and northern England. She became known for her skilled horseback riding and tightrope walking, a rare combination even then. Her fame grew, and she joined Astley's Amphitheatre, Britain's first permanent circus, where she stayed through several ownership changes. She was the lead rider when Philip Astley died, continuing under new managers William Davis and Charles Dibdin. Eventually, she married and faded from the public record. Some accounts say she became Mrs. Wilson, others list her as Mrs. Clough. Her younger sister Mary also performed, riding with swords and training other women in equestrian arts. Mary later married tightrope dancer Thomas Wilson and retired from the stage. While much about their later lives remains uncertain, both sisters were trailblazers in early British circus history. Number 9. The Great Farini. William Leonard Hunt didn't live one life. He lived several, all under different names. Born in 1838 in New York, raised in Ontario, and known to crowds as the Great Farini, he performed death-defying tightrope walks across Niagara Falls, often while blindfolded, carrying a man, or hanging upside down. Not content with just rope stunts, he joined the Union Army, invented floating shoes, trained acrobats, and claimed to walk across the Kalahari Desert on foot. After his wife tragically fell during a performance in Cuba, he kept moving, touring Europe with his adopted son, which was later revealed to be a cross-dressing acrobat named Lulu, inventing the human cannonball apparatus, and even co-producing acts with P.T. Barnum. Farini's eye for spectacle never faded. Later in life, he became a botanist, a writer, a war historian, and a sculptor. By the time he died in 1929, he'd built circuses, crossed continents, and left behind a paper trail of inventions, feats, and personas that even now feels hard to believe. Number 8. Henri Franconi. Henri never treated the circus like a side act. It was his theater, his canvas, his main event. Born into a family of performers, he and his brother Laurent ran the Cirque Olympique in Paris for 3 decades, mixing equestrian drama, pantomime, and full-blown spectacle. Henri wasn't just an acrobat or a rider. He wrote his own plays, choreographed his own chaos, and pushed the boundaries of what circus could stage. Audiences came for horses, but stayed for elaborate historical reenactments, tales, and even military dramas complete with battlefield simulations. He wrote dozens of scripts, some serious, some absurd, all tied together by motion, pageantry, and hoofbeats. He brought Don Quixote, pirates, revolutionaries, and demons to life, all while riders leaped through fire and galloped across wooden stages. Franconi's work blurred the line between circus and theater before anyone thought to separate them. His shows didn't just entertain, they shaped French popular culture. When he died in 1849, everyone was sad. Number 7. Caroline Crachami. Caroline Crachami didn't live long, but her name became a strange kind of legend. Born in Palermo in 1815, she weighed barely a pound and measured under 9 inches. Her story would have ended quietly, except someone saw profit. By age 9, she'd been taken to England and billed as the Sicilian Dwarf, or the Sicilian Fairy, displayed for money under the management of Dr. Gilligan. Crowds lined up in London to pat her head, feed her sweets, or simply gawk at how small she was. At one exhibition in Mayfair, over 200 people filed in to watch her slowly cross a room. The next day, she collapsed. Her body, already exhausted, gave out. Caroline died on June 3, 1824. She wasn't a star. She wasn't even treated like a child. She was something people paid to look at until her body couldn't take it anymore. And when it ended, they wrote pamphlets and memoirs, not to mourn her, but to keep selling the story. Number 6. Elvira Guerra. Elvira Guerra didn't wait for history to notice her. She galloped right into it. Raised around circus tents thanks to her father, Rodolfo Guerra, she learned early how to ride with flair and control. By the late 1800s, she was a standout equestrienne, opening her own venue in Bordeaux called the Grand Hippodrome. But it was in 1900 that she made a quiet kind of history. Riding in Paris at the Exposition Universelle, she became the first woman to represent Italy at the Olympic Games. She competed in the Hacks and Hunters combined event, not officially recognized at the time, but later recorded as part of the Olympics. Elvira didn't place high, but that wasn't the point. She had entered a male-dominated sport and era without apology. While others rode for medals, she rode for presence. Later in life, she faded from the spotlight, dying in Marseille in 1937. But her name lived on, in circus history and in records. Number 5. Lavinia Warren. Lavinia Warren stood just 32 inches tall, but her presence was anything but small. Born in 1841, she began touring at age 17, first with her uncle's Maritime Museum, then with P.T. Barnum's American Museum. It was there she met Charles Stratton, General Tom Thumb. Their engagement became a media frenzy. Their 1863 wedding drew 2,000 guests, including President Lincoln. The New York Times called her a queen. Lavinia was more than a performer. She was a star in an era when the public was obsessed with human oddities. Barnum knew how to sell a story, and Lavinia played the part perfectly, always graceful, always poised. After Stratton's death in 1883, she later married Count Primo Magri, another little person in showbiz. But the era of freak shows was fading. Lavinia continued to perform quietly, never slipping into scandal or pity. She died in 1919, admired for her dignity. While others were reduced to their stature, Lavinia made sure she was always seen as more than a sideshow curiosity. Number 4. Lena Jordan. Lena Jordan didn't shout her name into history, she flipped into it. At just 16 years old in 1897, she became the first person ever recorded to perform a triple somersault on the flying trapeze. Born in what's now Latvia, Jordan trained with the Flying Jordan Circus and was already a standout by her early teens. A year before the record-breaking flip in Sydney, she may have done it in the US. But that performance wasn't officially documented. After Sydney, there was no doubt. Jordan performed the triple again and again, eventually joining Barnum and Bailey, where she nailed the feat 28 more times. For years, the record was incorrectly credited to a man named Ernest Clark, who didn't perform it until more than a decade later. It wasn't until 1975 that Guinness World Records finally corrected the error. Jordan's achievement wasn't just a stunt, it set a new standard. While her later life remains a mystery, she is still in people's hearts. Number 3. Charles Tripp. Charles Tripp didn't like being pitied, and he never performed to be marveled at. He performed to show what was possible. Born without arms in Ontario in 1855, he trained himself to do everything with his feet: writing, shaving, brushing his hair, even woodwork. At 17, he left home for New York in search of P.T. Barnum. When he finally found him, Tripp didn't audition with speeches. He just sat down, brushed his own hair, folded a shirt, and laced his shoes using only his toes. Barnum hired him immediately. For decades, Tripp toured with Barnum and Bailey, not as a novelty, but as a craftsman. He signed autographs with his feet, carved intricate designs, and became known for his tandem bike act with Eli Bowen, the legless acrobat. Together, they symbolized cooperation, not just spectacle. Tripp toured until late in life, never begging for sympathy, never turning his condition into theater. He simply lived and worked. Number 2. The Black Scorpion. He didn't show up asking for sympathy. He showed up to challenge everything people thought a freak show was supposed to be. Billed as the Black Scorpion, he had split-hand malformation, but never played it for pity. When he performed at Coney Island sideshows by the seashore and later appeared on TLC's Taboo, he wasn't reviving the old model. He was flipping it on its head. His presence wasn't a sob story, it was defiance. He didn't want to be stared at, he wanted to be seen. His act wasn't about pain or shock, it was about confronting assumptions, turning discomfort into conversation. Every time he stepped on stage, he rewrote the script. You don't have to be perfect to have power, and you don't need to hide to be human. Where older sideshows asked audiences to gawk, the Black Scorpion invited them to think. He used his own body like a weapon against shame, and in doing so, carved space for others to do the same. Number 1. Two-headed Mexican. Pasquale Piñon didn't actually have two heads, but that didn't stop sideshow promoters from branding him as the two-headed Mexican. A railroad worker in early 1900s Texas, Piñon had a large benign tumor growing from his scalp. A promoter spotted it and saw an opportunity. They molded a wax face, complete with fake eyes, lips, and a nose, and strapped it over the growth. That was enough. People believed it. Piñon became a spectacle. He'd sit quietly while crowds gawked at his so-called parasitic twin. In reality, he didn't have craniopagus parasiticus, a rare condition where a second head does grow from the skull, but no one asked. The deception was crude, but it worked. His disfigurement was real, the extra face was not, and the ethics were murky at best. When the show ended, doctors removed the tumor. Piñon went back to life in obscurity, but for a few years, he became a famous fraud built on someone else's idea of deformity and on the public's hunger for shock. If you found this video interesting, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.